The Celestial Academy Cantina buzzed with the usual chaos of intergalactic student life. Verk sat alone at a corner table, his human fingers nervously drumming against the metallic surface as he checked his datapad for the 7th time. His blind date was late, and the surrounding tables of alien students had already noticed. "Look at the human," chittered a Zephyrian student, its translucent body rippling with what could only be described as mocking laughter. "All dressed up for nobody." Verk's cheeks flushed red. He'd worn his best jacket, a vintage earth leather piece his mother had sent from home. Among the bioluminescent Zif and the crystalline Krell students, he looked painfully ordinary. Maybe his date realized she could do better than a baseline species, sneered a Krell named Thox, his razor-sharp features gleaming under the cantina's lights. Several students at nearby tables joined in the laughter. Verk tried to ignore them, scrolling through his messages. Akim had confirmed she was coming. She was a transfer student from the outer colonies, and they'd connected over their shared love of ancient Earth literature in Professor Xanthor's xenoanthropology class. This was supposed to be perfect. "Hey, human," called out a bulky Dracon student. "Did you check if your date can even breathe oxygen? Might explain why she's not showing up." The cantina erupted in laughter. Verk's jaw clenched. He'd endured 3 semesters of this. Humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Federation, barely 2 decades into their membership. At the Academy, they were seen as the remedial students of the cosmos, slow, fragile, and technologically backward. Just as Verk considered leaving, the cantina doors slid open. Akim walked in and the mockery momentarily paused. She was human, too. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing simple utility clothes that marked her as someone from the working colonies, rather than Earth's diplomatic families. Her eyes scanned the room until they found Verk, and she smiled. The jeering resumed immediately. "Oh, perfect, 2 humans," Thox announced loudly. "They can bore each other with stories about their primitive chemical rockets." Akim's smile didn't waver as she crossed the cantina. She slid into the seat across from Verk. "Sorry I'm late. Xenobiology lab ran over." "It's okay," Verk said quietly, acutely aware of every eye in the cantina watching them. "Is it always like this?" Akim asked, her voice calm but her eyes sharp as they flicked toward the hostile tables. "Pretty much." A Zypherian student oozed closer to their table. "So what are you two going to do? Compare notes on how your species barely managed nuclear fusion before begging to join the Federation?" Akim leaned back in her chair, studying the alien with anthropological interest. "Actually, we were going to discuss the Krell-Zephyrian War. You know, the one that lasted 300 years and ended in mutual extinction-level damage before the Federation intervened." The Zephyrian's bioluminescence flickered uncertainly. "I'm fascinated by pre-contact conflicts," Akim continued conversationally. "Humans had dozens of world wars, sure, but we never quite managed to destroy our own solar system. I'm writing my thesis on species that needed external intervention to stop self-annihilation." The mocking laughter had stopped. Verk felt a grin tugging at his lips. Thox stood up, his crystalline form refracting the light aggressively. "You think you're clever? Humans are still what?" Akim interrupted. "Still the species that solved the Krell mathematics paradox in our first semester? Still the species with the highest scores in adaptive problem-solving? Or still the species you all keep trying to bully because deep down, you're terrified we're going to surpass you?" The cantina had gone deathly quiet. "That's enough." The voice cut through the silence like a plasma blade. Every student in the cantina immediately straightened. Principal Carvax entered, her towering insectoid form clicking across the floor with authority. She was a hive queen, one of the most respected species in the Federation, and her multifaceted eyes missed nothing. "I have been observing this establishment's atmosphere for some time," Carvax said, her mandibles clicking with displeasure. "The treatment of our human students has been disappointing." Thox tried to speak. "Principal, we were just demonstrating why the Krell species ranking has dropped 17 percentiles in collaborative exercises," Carvax interrupted smoothly. "Or perhaps explaining why Zypherian students have the highest dropout rate in xenocultural studies." She moved to the center of the cantina, her presence commanding absolute attention. "You mock humans for their late arrival to the Federation, for their chemical rockets and nuclear fusion, for being, as you say, primitive." Her voice carried the weight of centuries. "Let me educate you on something you clearly failed to learn in your own xenohistory classes." Carvax's eyes fixed on the room. Humans achieved spaceflight in barely 10,000 years from agricultural civilization. The Krell took 40,000. The Zephyrians took 60,000. The Draken took 75,000. Stunned silence. Humans went from atmospheric flight to lunar landing in 66 years. Most species take millennia for that leap. They developed quantum computing independently. They created AI ethics frameworks before AI consciousness emerged. They are the only species to have achieved global digital connectivity before achieving interstellar flight. She paused, letting that sink in. And most remarkably, they are the only species in Federation history to have stopped a global thermonuclear war through diplomacy, alone 3 times before joining the galactic community. Carvex turned to Verk and Akim. These 2 students represent a species that has survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcano eruptions, and its own adolescent violence. They learned to cooperate not because they had to join a federation, but because they chose to. Their evolution selected for adaptability, innovation, and resilience. She looked back at the alien students. So when you mock them, remember, you're mocking the species that will likely be running this academy in 50 years. Now I suggest you all return to your studies and reflect on what it means to be part of a truly cooperative galactic community. The principal left. The cantina remained silent. Slowly, students began returning to their own conversations. The hostility evaporated. Verk looked at Akim, who was grinning. So, she said, want to get out of here and find somewhere actually interesting? Absolutely, Verk replied, standing up with newfound confidence. As they walked out together, Verk noticed something remarkable. Several students nodded respectfully as they passed. The universe was changing, one mind at a time, and humanity was just getting started.